Hello and a very good day to everyone. Today, my friends and me will be presenting about an article critique entitled The Experimental Study on the Membrane Distillation of Highly Mineralized Mine Water. Let's begin. To start with, this is the synopsis of the article critique. This study investigates the feasibility of using vacuum membrane distillation, known as VMD, with the PVDF hollow fiber membranes to treat highly mineralized mine water from China's Ningdong area. The optimum cooperating conditions were found to be a temperature of 70 degrees Celsius, a vacuum pressure of negative 0.09 megapascals, and a feed flow rate of 1.5 liters per minute. Under these conditions, the system achieved a membrane flux of 8.85 kilograms per square meter per hour and an impressive desalination rate of 99.7%. The main challenge was the membrane falling, which progressed through the wetting, crystallization, and falling layer formation, mainly due to the calcium carbonate precipitation. So, to improve the long-term performance, this study recommends nanofiltration pretreatment and acid cleaning to reduce the scaling and extend the membrane life. Next, I'll present the first critique, which focuses on the clarity of the research question. This study has three clear objectives. First is to use membrane distillation to treat high salinity mine water. Second, to characterize membrane damage and falling during long-term operation. And third, to explore the connection between falling and permeate quality. The study has several strengths. The research question is clear and well-structured, addresses an important real-world problem, and the objectives are specific and aligned with the main research question. In addition, the study follows a logical flow, starting from problem identification, followed by the proposed solution, optimization of operating parameters, and finally, falling analysis. However, there are some areas for improvement. The study does not present a strong hypothesis on the expected falling mechanisms, lacks a quantified performance target for industrial application, and does not clearly define that the upper salinity limit the VMD system can handle. But overall, the research question is focused, relevant, and sufficiently narrow, allowing for meaningful experimental investigation while making valuable contributions to the field of membrane distillation.
Moving on to the appropriateness of methods, the researchers used three main approaches. First, response surface methodology (RSM) with a box banking design was applied to optimize the VMD operating conditions. Second, SEM, EDS, and contact angle measurements were used to examine the membrane structure and properties. Third, the laboratory experiments were conducted under controlled conditions by adjusting the operating variables. The researchers then used membrane flux, salt rejection, and fouling to evaluate VMD performance.
Next, I will discuss about the validity of the results and data interpretation. First, let's look at the optimization model. To find the best operating conditions, the researchers used a box-Banken design. Is this model reliable? Yes. The statistics show a high F value of 29.79 and a very low P value under 0.001. This means the model fits the actual data almost perfectly with very little error. Because the maths is so strong, we can trust their main finding that vacuum pressure is the biggest factor controlling membrane flux. This perfectly matches established chemical engineering research. Second, how did they prove what caused the membrane fouling? The authors didn't just guess, they used a mix of chemistry and a visual proof. By tracking a drop in the water's pH and bicarbonate levels, and matching that with SAM microscope images, they clearly showed the cause. Dense calcium carbonate crystals were physically blocking the inner membrane pores. This clear proof perfectly matches what we already know from the previous scaling studies. Finally, they were just as thorough in proving membrane wetting. How did they know sodium chloride was the cause? They connected the chemical data to the system performance. Their EDS scans showed over 6% sodium on the outer membrane, which perfectly matched a sudden spike in electrical conductivity. To physically prove the membrane was damaged, they measured its contact angle. The angle dropped sharply from 106 degrees down to 32 degrees, proving it has lost its water-repelling ability. Overall, by combining physical, chemical, and visual data, the authors make a very strong case of how the membrane feels.
This study has several limitations. First, it mainly focused on the technical performance of the membrane without considering economic feasibility or long-term operation and maintenance. Second, the researchers used mine water from only a single location, which limits the general stability of the findings to other mining sites. Finally, the experiments were conducted in a controlled laboratory environment, which may not fully represent the changing conditions of real mining operations. Therefore, the results may differ when applied on a large, real-world scale.
Overall, this study demonstrates that vacuum membrane distillation has strong potential for treating highly mineralized coal mine water, achieving a high membrane flux of 8.86 kg per meter square hour and excellent 99.7% salt rejection. However, the findings are limited because the experiments use pre-treated mine water and only evaluate short-term membrane fouling, which may not accurately represent long-term industrial performance. Therefore, further long-term studies using raw mine waters are recommended. To support the fouling analysis, the researchers used SEM, EDS, ion chromatography, and contact angle measurements to identify crystal morphology, elemental composition, ion concentration changes, and membrane hydrophobicity. However, I suggest adding X-ray diffraction or XRD analysis as it can accurately identify the crystalline phase of mineral scales such as calcite, aragonite, and veterite, providing stronger evidence for the fouling mechanism.
Finally, regarding ethical concern, this study did not require IRB approval. What is IRB? It's Institutional Review Board, which involves human participants. However, since there is no human or animal subjects, so no IRB approval is required. Then, the methodology was transparent and published under an open access license, allowing all the other researchers to replicate the work. Hence, it clearly shows how transparent the work are. However, only one ethical concern is lack of explicit conflict of interest statement. As the study was conducted through collaboration between academia and industry, usually the statement to clarify that there is no conflict of interest is needed, which is not mentioned in the study. In conclusion, we have proved the concept that VMD, vacuum membrane distillation, is feasible in treating water. However, since it tested on pre-treated water during a very short-term trial, so we cannot adopt it into a real world and conclude as a general claim, since it requires testing on larger scales. So that's all from us. Thank you.